All right, welcome back to our BCBA exam practice question series. This is ABA exam review. We're going to go through the next set of questions together and break them down. If you're new to the channel, welcome. If you're returning, welcome back. Please like and subscribe. Check out behavioranalyststudy.com for all of our study materials, including our combo pack. As always, when you pass, let us know so we can include you in the Sunday shout out. Work hard, study hard. Let's get going. Catherine lays out several stimuli in front of a client and asks them to pick their favorite. The client just looks at Catherine without choosing any item. The client's parent tells Catherine that the client doesn't really take items from strangers. What should Catherine likely try next given this information? So we're looking at Catherine, her behavior, and what is she going to try next? Based on this information, what do you think Catherine is doing? To me, it looks like some sort of preference assessment, right? I'm laying out several stimuli and I ask to pick their favorite. When we talk about several stimuli, it typically means what, 3 or more? And when we have 3 or more stimuli in a preference assessment, you are looking at a multiple stimulus preference assessment, right? Remember, 1 stimulus at a time is a single choice, 2 at a time is a paired choice, 3 or more is going to be multiple stimulus. So we're running a multiple stimulus, but it isn't working, right? Because the client isn't choosing items, which sometimes isn't unusual in preference assessments, especially if you work with children with autism who might not take items. And then specifically this child, the parent says, well, they don't take items from strangers. So all these things are working against us given this arrangement. So knowing this information, what is Catherine going to try next? Because your job as an analyst is to figure out, okay, what is my best strategy? You don't get committed to any one strategy. You don't get committed to one intervention. You adjust as needed. So what is Catherine likely to try next? A paired choice assessment. Well, if we know the client doesn't take items from strangers, a paired choice is going to be tough because a paired choice specifically requires you to take an item. We present 2 items at a time and you're supposed to choose an item. Paired choice is not going to be very effective. Neither is single choice, because single choice, you're still presenting one item and you're expecting the client to engage with the item somehow. But if the client isn't doing anything, isn't choosing items, isn't taking items, a single choice isn't going to be that effective either. So what we're probably looking at is C, a free operant assessment. And with a free operant assessment, we're going to give the client free rein, natural observation, and record as the client naturally engages with the environment. And then D, a multiple stimulus assessment, is what she just tried. It was ineffective. We're going to go to the next thing. What is best given our situation? That's your job as the analyst. Catherine is going to try a free operant assessment. Alex is going out on the boat this weekend and plans to do some tubing. He wants to know what method of tubing allows him to stay on the tube the longest. He kneels on the tube several times, stands on the tube several times, and then lays on the tube several times and records his total time after each. He then compares the average times of all 3 methods. What type of analysis does this most resemble? All right, so what is Alex doing? He's doing an analysis, and he's doing an analysis on the method of tubing, which is going to allow him to stay on the tube the longest. And so Alex is doing a pretty systematic process here, right? Because he isn't simply just, well, I'm going to kneel today and see how it feels, and tomorrow I'm going to lay down and see how it feels. No, he's going through each intervention one at a time, right? Several times, removing it, adding a different intervention, recording data each time, and using that data to make decisions. So this is very empirical. It's very experimental, right? He's really looking, is it going to be kneeling? Is it going to be standing? Or is it going to be laying? That's going to give me the best time with the tube. So when you have a systematic, empirical analysis like this, what is that called, and what does it most resemble? A descriptive analysis. Well, a descriptive analysis, we're not doing this manipulation, right? With the descriptive analysis, we're just looking at a situation and describing what we see, right? We might be taking data, but we're just describing what we see. It'd be like if Alex watched his brother tube and he just took data on his brother tubing without manipulating anything. He's not drawing correlations. He's not saying this is causing this. He's just taking data. That's a descriptive analysis. With a correlational analysis, that would be more along the lines of Alex kneels on the tube, and then he says, well, I stayed on the tube pretty long that time. Maybe there's a correlation between kneeling and staying on the tube. A correlation just says A might be related to B somehow. There might be some sort of effect there, right? We're not saying A is causing B or A is changing B with a correlation. We're just saying A might be related to B. But with an experimental analysis, Alex is actually manipulating all these independent variables to look at time. He's then taking data and analyzing it with averages. He's very, very empirical, very systematic. He's doing an actual experimental analysis to try and figure out what is the best method for staying on the tube. A company hires a very expensive consultant to come in and improve the company's training program. The consultant explains their OBM background and explains all the procedures that will be used in the new training program. The consultant says the training manual will be usable across the entire organization. The CEO of the company tells the consultant that all they care about is if the program works or not. What dimension of ABA is the CEO concerned with? All right, we have a longer question. So what do? Well, what we do in every question, right? We attack the question. We don't jump to the answer choices. We make sure we understand what the question is saying. So the question is asking us, what dimension of ABA is the CEO concerned with? So we're really concerned with the CEO. The company hired a consultant to improve the program. The consultant says, well, I'm an OBM. They explain the procedures. They say it's usable. The CEO says, I don't care. All I care about is if the program works or not. So that's a very specific dimension. And what specific dimension does the CEO care about? A, applied. Applied says it's going to be socially valid and meaningful. The CEO doesn't seem too concerned with that. He says, does the program work? Does it not? You're the expert. All I care about is if it works. So B, analytic. This is saying, well, I need to see a functional relationship. What happens if the program is implemented? It's a total failure, but there's success anyway. There's some sort of confound. Well, the CEO is not going to really care, right? I just need to know, has the behavior changed, right? All I'm worried about is, did the behavior change, right? Was whatever you're doing effective? And if the training program is improved, then it's been effective. So C, conceptually systematic. The CEO isn't too concerned with their methodology here, right? What they're worried about is, does the program work or not? Is the program effective? Socially valid and meaningful. The CEO is not talking about that. He says, I want to know, okay, does your program work, right? If your program doesn't work, it's no good to me. I don't care about your functional relationships. I don't care about your socially meaningful or valid changes. I just need to know, is the program effective, right? And now that might not be how we look at things, right? But given the information, the CEO just cares, is the program effective, is it not? It could be the most applied program in the world. If it doesn't work, who cares? It can establish a huge functional relationship. If it's not effective to a meaningful degree, again, who cares? The CEO is worried about, given the information, that the program is effective or is it not? Mr. Garrison's class is slow to transition in from recess after the bell rings. Mr. Garrison plans to work on this with his class. He brings the class to the recess setting, rings the bell, and tells the class to transition. He does this multiple times in a row. Mr. Garrison is using what? So we're looking at Mr. Garrison, and the key here is, because we're always attacking the question, is he's doing this multiple times in a row. So we know he's trying to change a behavior, right? Because the class is slow to transition, and he wants to change that. So what does he do? Well, he has the class transition over and over and over and over again. What does that sound like to you? Okay, sounds like an overcorrection procedure to me. So what type? Well, we know it's not A, response cost, because response cost, we're removing a earned positive reinforcer. So we're looking at one of our overcorrections. What about B, positive practice overcorrection? Sure, with positive practice, we're engaging in the right target behavior, the behavior we want to see, over and over again. Mr. Garrison has the class transition multiple times in a row to try and get it right. So B looks like our answer. Do we stop? No, we read all of our answer choices. So C, negative practice overcorrection. Negative practice, we'd be engaging in the wrong behavior over and over again, which is not what the class is doing. The class is engaging in the correct behavior over and over again. And then D, restitutional overcorrection. You repair the environment and then do even more. We're not repairing anything. Mr. Garrison is saying, I want you to engage in the right behavior multiple times in a row until we get it right. So Mr. Garrison is using B, positive practice overcorrection. Julian's mom works from home and has a standing meeting every day at 9 a.m. and 2 p.m. Julian will engage in attention-seeking behavior when at home, so Julian's mom plays with Julian and talks with Julian for 20 minutes before each of her meetings. Julian's mom is using what type of intervention? So, who are we looking at? We have Julian and we have Julian's mom. We're looking at Julian's mom. It's very important in behavior questions. You know exactly who you're looking at or talking about. So we know Julian's mom works from home, has a meeting at 9 a.m. and 2 p.m., and that Julian will engage in attention-seeking behavior. So as soon as you hear attention-seeking behavior, I want you to start thinking, all right, how do we work with attention-seeking behavior? Well, a very common way is non-contingent reinforcement, which is an antecedent intervention. We give the attention ahead of time to try and decrease the motivation to gain it later on. And it seems like that's what Julian's mom is doing, because she's playing with Julian and talking with Julian 20 minutes before each of her meetings. There's no contingency in place. She's saying, I have this meeting coming up. Julian engages in attention-seeking behavior. I'm going to give him attention prior to the meetings. What am I using? A, an antecedent intervention. Sure. Why is it an antecedent intervention? Well, because Julian's mom is being proactive. She's being preventative. She's not waiting for the attention-seeking behavior to occur, then reacting. She's being proactive and trying to prevent the attention-seeking behavior from occurring at the wrong time. So she's using non-contingent reinforcement. She's going in, being proactive, and using an antecedent intervention. What about B, consequence intervention? Well, she's not reacting to anything, right? She's being proactive. And a consequence would be Julian has already engaged in attention-seeking behavior. What did Julian's mom do in response? That's not what's occurring here. C, punishment. Well, it can't be punishment because it's not a consequence. And then D, functional communication training. There's no indication she's teaching Julian anything about functional communication. What we do know is she's being proactive, she's being preventative, she's using an antecedent intervention to attempt to reduce the motivation for Julian to engage in this attention-seeking behavior at the wrong time. She is desperately trying to quit smoking. She's quit about 1,000 times at this point and feels as if she has tried everything. A friend recommends to Gracie that she should put a rubber band on her wrist and then pop the rubber band each time she thinks about smoking. If Gracie does this and it decreases her thinking about smoking, what has Gracie utilized? All right, what is the question asking about? Well, they're asking about Gracie and her intervention. So we know, what do we know about the intervention? Well, most importantly, we know it's decreased her thinking about smoking. Immediately when you hear that word decrease, you've got to think punishment, you've got to think extinction. Okay, those are our two primary decrease behavior principles, punishment and extinction. Not the same thing, both work to decrease. So we're already thinking punishment because her behavior is decreased. Now, what has she done? Well, she's followed a friend's recommendation to put a rubber band on her wrist and pop the rubber band each time she thinks about smoking. So she thinks about smoking, she pops the rubber band. This decreases her thinking. So we know what? Well, we know it's punishment. So let's then ask ourselves, is it positive or is it negative? Well, positive, we're adding something. Negative, we're taking something away. And since she's popping it and she's adding that stimulus, it's going to be positive. So if we look at our answer choices, we have positive punishment, and then we have these negative reinforcements. Well, we can eliminate C and D, negative reinforcement, because we're not increasing behavior, right? Behavior is decreasing. And it gives us positive. So then we have to answer this question, is it socially mediated or automatic? Well, be careful. Just because Gracie's friend recommended the intervention, Gracie's friend isn't the one administering or delivering the consequence. Socially mediated means a second person is giving the consequence, right? They're providing the consequence. That's not happening here. Gracie's giving her own consequence. So she's, quote unquote, alone, right? When we think automatic, I want you to think alone. So she's alone, giving positive, right? Because she's adding this pop, punishment because she's decreasing her behavior. So if Gracie does this, what has Gracie utilized? B, automatic positive punishment. You, a behavior analyst, believe that everything is going well with all of your cases until you get a phone call from a parent who has some concerns. The parent tells you that the behavior technician who goes to their house will often ask for bottles of water and snacks to have for themselves. The parent says the technician claims they come straight from school and don't have time to eat. What should you do as the analyst? This is going to be part of your job as the supervising behavior analyst, is to deal with situations like this, right? You think everything is going great, and then you get a phone call from a parent, and suddenly you've got a situation to handle. And it's very easy to just take the parent's side because you want to look good, you want to maintain that relationship, and throw your technician under the bus. We've got to avoid that because they're part of the team. It's a collaborative process. This parent is saying that the technician goes to the house, wants bottles of water, wants snacks, and we know that's unacceptable, right? You shouldn't even take food if it's offered, much less ask. So if you're in the situation, what should you do as the analyst? A, question the parent's story until you've seen the behavior for yourself. Well, there's no reason to believe the parent would lie about this, and what are the chances you actually are going to see this behavior for yourself, right? You'd have to be there to supervise. They'd have to do this in front of you. There's a lot of things, a lot of ifs, right? So A is not going to be great because you're not actually making any decisions. You're not changing anything. B, talk with your technicians about the concerns that were raised. Yes, every ethical violation, unless somebody's been actually harmed, should begin with a conversation. You should be conversating with the person you believe is engaging in the unethical behavior and try to change it before moving forward. C, report your client to the BCBA for the ethical violation. It's not to that point yet. You don't even know if this technician knows they've done anything wrong, understands why they've done anything wrong. C is too drastic. Start with B. And then D, discipline your technician for the ethical violation. First thing is talk with them. Okay, what is going on, right? Ask them, why is this true? I heard the story. Give me your side. If it's true and they don't stop, then we can discipline, then we can report. First things first, in ethical situations, you want to give somebody the chance and the benefit of the doubt that they're going to change, that they may not know, they didn't realize, or that they're willing to change. So the first thing you're going to do as an analyst is talk with the technician about the concerns that were raised. While jogging through your neighborhood, you see your next door neighbor who waves at you as you pass. You wave back, and your neighbor says, "Great day for a jog." Your waving is considered what? All right, pretty straightforward behavior question, and they're really asking you to identify antecedents and consequences, which is a basic strategy, but on the exam, you cannot afford to neglect basic principles. You have to know everything, all right? So don't neglect the quote-unquote easy stuff. It's going to bite you, right? So we're looking at waving, okay? So where is the waving? You want to identify where the waving's at. Who waves at you as you pass? Your waving, right? Because we have neighbor waving and your waving. So we're looking at you waving. Is considered what? Well, your next door neighbor waves at you, then you wave back. So you waving back is a response, okay? And then the neighbor, their waving is a response to you running, so you waving back as a consequence, and you waving back evokes your neighbor saying, "Great day for a jog." So you waving back serves three different things, depending on whose perspective. Okay, your waving is considered a response in relation to neighbor waving at you as you pass. From the neighbor's perspective, you waving back as a consequence, and then you waving back as an antecedent for a great day for a jog. So your waving is considered what? A, the consequence of you jogging. Well, it's not the consequence of you jogging, it's the consequence of your neighbor waving at you as you pass from the neighbor's perspective. B, the response to your neighbor waving at you. Yes, antecedent, neighbor waves, response, you wave back. C, the antecedent to your neighbor saying, "Great day for a jog." Yes, antecedent, antecedent, you wave back, and the response is "Great day for a jog." So a little convoluted there, right? Because you wave back is serving a lot of different purposes, and you've got to get good at identifying those. This is very fundamental stuff, but it's going to help you on the harder consequence questions, antecedent questions, behavioral questions. So get good at that. What's the antecedent? What's the response? What's the consequence? Let me look at it from a different perspective. How does it change? Et cetera, et cetera. Excellent. Check out behavioranalyststudy.com for all of our study materials. Let us know when you pass. Work hard, study hard. See you soon.